Usually we talk about like a systemic failure. We look for the exact moment the machine broke. A
Right.
faulty valve or a bad line of code or just some specific catastrophic structural stress point.
Yeah, we want the failure to be mechanical because if it's quantifiable, it's fixable.
Exactly.
You just replace the part, you patch the code.
But what happens when the failure isn't mechanical but ideological?
Ooh, yeah, that's the real question.
What happens when a society that's built entirely on the premise of secrecy and, like, containment suddenly finds its walls breached from the inside out?
It's terrifying.
Right. You aren't looking at a broken machine anymore. You're looking at a society in free fall.
And that free fall, it forces every single individual within that society to fundamentally renegotiate their reality.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because today, for you, the listener, we're looking at the exact moment a shadow conflict breaches containment and becomes an open, undeniable war.
It's such a massive shift.
It really is. Our source material today is the text of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, specifically looking at those incredible opening chapters.
The best opening in the series, in my opinion.
Totally agree. And for those of you keeping track of your editions at home, we're diving into the text accompanied by the Mary Grand Prix illustrations.
Oh, those are iconic.
Yeah, and it's the one carrying J.K. Rowling's dedication to her daughter, Mackenzie, describing the book as, and I love this, her ink and paper twin.
You know, that dedication always strikes me. Calling a book a twin implies this shared DNA, like a profound intimacy.
Yeah.
And this text is arguably the most intimate, psychologically complex installment of the whole series. I mean, it just drops the veneer of the schoolyard adventure entirely.
Our mission today is to really tear into the anatomy of this societal breakdown. We are going to examine the massive political fallout bleeding across worlds, the desperate lengths maternal instinct will drive a person to
heartbreak. So intense. Plus, the crushing psychological weight of a prophecy on a teenager and how, bizarrely, daily life awkwardly limps on amidst utter terror.
Because people still have to take exams, right?
Exactly. We are going to look at how people cope when the invisible barriers that keep them safe simply evaporate.
And the structural brilliance of how this text begins is that it denies the reader the comfort of the familiar.
Oh, completely.
Like, we don't start at Privet Drive. We don't start with the protagonist. We are violently thrown into the perspective of someone who has absolutely no context for the war he is suddenly losing.
We start in the office of the Muggle Prime Minister.
Right.
And the text paints a picture of a man who is enduring just a professional and psychological nightmare.
A terrible, terrible week.
He is sitting alone, late at night, fielding the political fallout from a series of what seem to be completely unrelated, devastating catastrophes.
And the specific nature of these catastrophes is really crucial here.
Go ahead, lay them out. So, the Brockdale Bridge collapses, killing dozens of Muggles. Two prominent figures, Amelia Bones and Emmeline Vance, are brutally murdered in highly publicized incidents.
Which is huge news.
Right. Then a freak hurricane ravages the West Country. And to top it all off, a junior minister, Herbert Chorley, experiences a sudden, inexplicable mental break and starts behaving like a duck.
I mean, to the Prime Minister and to the general public, this looks like a catastrophic failure of infrastructure, national security, and public health all at once.
He's getting roasted by the press.
Oh, his political opponents are tearing him apart. He's taking the blame for a bridge he didn't underfund and a hurricane he couldn't possibly predict.
It's absurd.
It's like trying to fix a catastrophic plumbing leak in your apartment, only to find out the water is actually pouring in from a parallel dimension.
That is, wow, yeah, that is exactly what it's like.
He's trying to govern a reality that has suddenly stopped adhering to the laws of physics and sociology.
It is the ultimate crisis of leadership. The Prime Minister is operating under the assumption that the world is rational.
Right.
But when the rational explanations fail, he is just left with a void. And into that void steps Cornelius Fudge.
Fudge's arrival through the Flu Network is such a jarring collision of worlds. Like, the Prime Minister knows Fudge.
Yeah, he's met him before.
He knows the other minister from a series of increasingly stressful visits over the years. But the Fudge that steps out of the fire this time, he isn't the pompous, self-assured politician of the past.
Not at all.
He is physically diminished. Thinner, grayer, just completely defeated.
Because Fudge is the embodiment of a failed political strategy.
Oh, 100%.
For an entire year, his administration ran on a platform of aggressive denial. He weaponized the state media to discredit anyone claiming Voldemort had returned.
He chose political comfort over public safety.
Exactly. And now the bill has come due. Fudge has to look the Muggle Prime Minister in the eye and explain that, well, none of the recent disasters were natural or infrastructural.
It's all magic.
Yeah. The bridge was destroyed by Death Eaters as a blackmail tactic. The hurricane was actually a rampage by giants. The murders were targeted assassinations.
And poor Herbert Chorley acting like a duck.
Just a poorly executed imperious curse.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the statute of secrecy, the foundational law of the magical world, hasn't just been bent here, it has been shattered.
Completely broken.
The violence of the magical world is spilling over and claiming non-magical lives. Fudge is admitting that his government has lost its monopoly on force and its ability to maintain the illusion of separation.
And the Prime Minister's reaction is so deeply human, He is terrified, but he is also furious.
I love his dialogue here.
Yeah, he yells at Fudge, but for heaven's sake, you're wizards. You can do magic. Surely you can sort out, well, anything.
Which perfectly encapsulates the external perception of power. If you have magic, you should be omnipotent.
Right, you should be immune to failure.
But the reality, as Fudge so grimly points out, is that the other side has magic too. Magic doesn't negate human malice or incompetence or systemic fragility.
It just scales it up.
Exactly. It scales it up. And the crazy part is Fudge isn't even the minister anymore at this point.
No, he's basically just a messenger now.
He admits he was ousted, sacked 3 days prior after the magical public demanded his resignation.
Which brings us to the introduction of Rufus Scrimgeour, the new minister, and Scrimgeour's physical description in the text is entirely deliberate.
The lion imager.
Yes. Tawny hair, bushy eyebrows, wire-rimmed glasses, a slight limp. He is consistently compared to an old lion. He is a former Auror, a career soldier stepping into the highest political office.
And Scrimgeour's approach to the Muggle Prime Minister is a complete paradigm shift from Fudge.
Oh, it's night and day.
Fudge, for all his faults, maintained a semblance of diplomatic courtesy. Scrimgeour treats the Prime Minister like a subordinate in a war zone.
He doesn't ask for cooperation, he dictates security protocols.
Yeah, he casually reveals that the Prime Minister's highly efficient new secretary, Kingsley Shacklebolt, is actually an undercover R.
And when the Prime Minister attempts to assert his authority, like insisting he decides who works in his office, Scrimgeour doesn't even humor him. He shuts the argument down instantly.
It's basically a soft coup.
It is. The magical government is unilaterally imposing martial law on the Muggle executive branch because they view the Muggles as entirely defenseless liabilities.
It sets a chilling tone. The era of peacetime bureaucracy is dead. But, this collapse of institutional control isn't just happening at the top level of government.
Right.
You see the exact same fracture of trust, the same paranoia happening within the inner circles of the opposing side.
Moving from the macro-politics to the micro-politics.
Exactly. We move from the sterile, historic office of the Prime Minister to the grim, decaying reality of Spinner's End.
And the physical setting here is essential to understanding the psychological state of the characters involved. Spinner's End is this labyrinth of dilapidated brick Muggle houses, overshadowed by a disused mill chimney.
It smells of dirty water.
Yes, it is a place of absolute abandonment.
And running blindly through this maze is Narcissa Malfoy. She's described almost like an apparition, pale, terrified, looking like a drowned person.
And Bellatrix Lestrange is chasing her.
Yeah, physically trying to stop her, reminding her of the Dark Lord's strict orders not to speak his plans.
The dynamic between these two sisters illustrates a profound ideological divide within Voldemort's ranks.
How fascinating.
Bellatrix represents absolute fanatical devotion to the ideology. The orders of the Dark Lord supersede all human attachment for her.
But Narcissa is driven by something much older and much more visceral, which is maternal survival.
Exactly. Narcissa doesn't care about the orders. She doesn't care about the grand plan. Lucius failed at the Department of Mysteries, and as punishment, Voldemort has assigned their 16-year-old son, Draco, a mission that is clearly a death sentence.
She is desperate.
She is seeking out the only person she thinks might be able to navigate the impossible corner they've been backed into Severus Snape.
When they enter Snape's house, the environment reflects his mind perfectly.
Oh, the set design is brilliant.
The sitting room is tiny, dark, and entirely walled with ancient, leather-bound books. It feels like a padded cell.
It is the sanctuary of a man who lives entirely inside his own intellect, isolated and heavily fortified against the outside world.
And we find Peter Pettigrew there, essentially functioning as a despised captive servant. But the absolute core of this entire sequence is the interrogation.
Right, because Bellatrix detests Snape.
She views him as an interloper, a traitor who has played both sides for years. She stands over him and unleashes a barrage of questions that essentially serve as the prosecution's case against Severus Snape.
She articulates every lingering doubt we as readers have ever had. Where was he when Voldemort fell? Why did he stop Quirrell from acquiring the Sorcerer's Stone?
Why did he wait 2 hours to return when the Dark Mark burned?
Why has he allowed Harry Potter to survive for 5 years?
And Snape's handling of this is staggering. It's like watching a grandmaster chess player explaining his moves to an angry novice.
That's a great way to put it.
He doesn't match her anger. He sits back, sips his elf-made wine, and calmly, systematically dismantles her entire reality.
He points out that if he couldn't answer these questions, the Dark Lord would have killed him long ago.
So is Snape actually a loyal Death Eater here, or is he just incredibly good at reverse engineering excuses for his actions to keep his cover?
See, what's fascinating here is how Snape manipulates Bellatrix's arrogance by calmly answering questions she thought would trap him. His rhetorical strategy relies on reframing his perceived failures as strategic necessities.
Right.
Why didn't he search for Voldemort? Because he believed him finished, just like Bellatrix's own brother-in-law, Lucius, did.
Ooh, he implicates her own family to neutralize her attack.
Exactly. And why did he stop Quirrell? Because Quirrell was a mediocre wizard acting on his own, or so Snape thought, because Voldemort was too weak to reveal himself.
Snape uses Voldemort's own paranoia and need for secrecy to justify his actions against him.
But his most brilliant defense is regarding his delay. Bellatrix demands to know why he didn't instantly return when the mark burned.
Yeah, the 2-hour window.
Snape explains that those 2 hours of delay are the precise reason he's still valuable. By returning to Dumbledore first, claiming he was going back to Voldemort only to act as a spy for the Order, he secured his cover.
He weaponizes the concept of the double agent.
He does.
I really want to dig into the psychology of this moment because Snape is speaking with such absolute conviction, providing excuses that perfectly satisfy the requirements of a loyal Death Eater.
Yeah.
But every single one of those excuses also perfectly aligns with the actions of a man truly loyal to Dumbledore. He exists entirely in this quantum state of espionage.
He has to. If he leans too far in either direction, he dies. He survives by constructing a narrative that is entirely dependent on the biases of the person listening.
That's so true.
Bellatrix here's a masterful, cynical manipulator who has fooled Dumbledore. Dumbledore here's a reformed man doing terrible things for the greater good. Snape's true allegiance is buried under layers of impenetrable intellectual armor.
But Narcissa cuts right through the intellectual sparring. She collapses at his feet, sobbing, begging him to intervene for Draco.
Because she knows the logic doesn't matter. Her son is going to die.
And here, Snape makes a pivot that shocks Bellatrix. He agrees to help.
And Narcissa, recognizing that verbal promises are completely meaningless in their world, demands the ultimate collateral. She demands he make the unbreakable vow.
The mechanics of the unbreakable vow are terrifying. Bellatrix acts as the bonder. She places her wand on their joined hands.
It's such a visceral piece of magic.
With every promise Snape makes to watch over Draco, to protect him, and to carry out the assassination himself if Draco fails, a thin tongue of brilliant red flame shoots from the wand.
It binds their hands together like wire.
Then like a chain.
And finally like a fiery snake. It is the physical manifestation of a binding magical contract.
It is a fatal commitment. If Snape breaks the vow, the magic kills him. He is legally and spiritually tethered to Draco's fate.
It forces us to ask what Snape's endgame is here. Is he protecting a student? Is he cementing his position with Voldemort? Or is he stepping into a trap Dumbledore set for him long ago?
Right.
Regardless, the vow locks his trajectory. He's no longer just a passive observer or a spy. He is contractually obligated to commit a horrific act.
Well, and the tragedy of Draco Malfoy being forced into a violent adulthood as a mechanism of punishment finds a direct parallel in Harry's journey.
While Draco is handed a death sentence by a Dark Master, Harry is simultaneously being fast-tracked into an adult war by his protector.
Dumbledore.
Exactly. We see this play out at Privet Drive. Harry is waiting by his window, a packed trunk nowhere in sight because he refuses to believe Dumbledore will actually show up.
And the physical space around Harry tells the story of the Bleeding Worlds again. His floor is littered with ministry pamphlets detailing how to detect Polyjuice Potion and how to defend against Inferi.
The macro-level horror of the war has literally invaded his bedroom.
When Dumbledore arrives precisely at midnight, the contrast between the ancient, immense power of the headmaster and the mundane, sterile environment of the Dursleys' living room is incredibly stark.
It really is. And Dumbledore's behavior in the Dursleys' living room is a masterly exercise in psychological dominance.
Oh, he completely owns the room.
He doesn't yell, he doesn't threaten them overtly, he is excruciatingly polite. He comments on Petunia's agapanthus.
Which is just so funny.
He conjures a sofa out of thin air that deliberately knocks the Dursleys behind the knees, forcing them to sit down.
It's the velvet glove over the iron fist. Dumbledore conjures glasses of Madame Rosmerta's oak-matured mead.
The Dursleys, paralyzed by their hatred and fear of magic, refuse to touch them.
Consequently, the magical glasses persistently bounce against the sides of their heads for the duration of the meeting.
It is a darkly comedic visual, but it serves a vital purpose. It strips the Dursleys of their dignity and control in their own home. It establishes Dumbledore's absolute authority before he even begins to speak about the serious matters at hand.
And those matters begin with the legal complexities of Sirius Black's death.
Right.
Dumbledore informs Harry that he is the sole beneficiary of Sirius's will. This includes number 12, Grimmauld Place, the Hippogriff Witherwings, and the loathsome house elf creature.
And Harry's immediate visceral reaction is rejection. He doesn't want the house. It's a tomb of dark memories where Sirius was miserable.
And he absolutely loathes Creature, whom he correctly views as complicit in Sirius's murder.
But inheritance in this narrative is rarely about wealth. It's about the transfer of burden. Harry is inheriting the unresolved trauma and the dark history of the Black family.
That's a great point.
Dumbledore explains the magical legalities. If there are ancient enchantments on the house requiring a pureblood heir, ownership might automatically transfer to Bellatrix Lestrange, Sirius's murderer.
So they have to test the inheritance. Dumbledore summons Creature directly into the Dursleys' pristine living room.
And Creature arrives screaming, throwing a violent tantrum, demanding to go to Bellatrix.
Dumbledore instructs Harry to give him an order, because if Harry owns him, the magic will force Creature to obey.
Harry yells, "Creature, shut up!" And the immediate physical effect of the magic takes hold. Creature chokes, unable to make a sound, writhing on the floor.
It is a brutal assertion of ownership. It forces Harry to actively participate in a system, the enslavement of house elves that he finds abhorrent, purely for strategic necessity.
It's such a complex moral moment.
Yeah. Dumbledore then pragmatically suggests sending Creature to work in the Hogwarts kitchens to keep him under surveillance. Harry is forced to manage the messy, ugly realities of adult warfare.
Having settled the magical legalities, Dumbledore finally turns his attention to Vernon and Petunia, and the temperature in the room just plummets.
Dumbledore drops the pleasantries. He clearly and coldly enumerates their failures. He points out that they never treated Harry as a son, that Harry has known nothing but neglect and cruelty under their roof.
He states it as an empirical fact, completely immune to Vernon's blustering.
It's like a judge delivering a devastating, undeniable verdict with a gentle smile. But it begs the question, why does Dumbledore wait until now, after 15 years, to finally call out the Dursleys' abuse?
Well, this confrontation has been building for 15 years, but Dumbledore's timing is incredibly strategic. He acknowledges that the only thing the Dursleys did right was to provide Harry with house room.
Right.
By doing so, Petunia Lily's sister sealed the ancient blood magic that protects Harry.
Dumbledore explains the mechanics of this protection. It is tethered to Harry's minority. The moment he turns 17, the legal age of adulthood in the magical world, the magic dissolves.
The countdown has begun.
So Dumbledore is laying out these harsh truths to ensure the Dursleys allow Harry to return one final time, maintaining that vital protective ward until the very last second.
He forces them to acknowledge their complicity in the magic they despise, and then he simply leaves, sweeping Harry out the door into the night.
And almost immediately, Dumbledore leverages Harry's newfound maturity. They apparate to the village of Budleigh Babberton.
And Harry's experience of apparition is violent. He feels like he's being squeezed through a tight rubber tube.
But when they arrive, they are standing outside a Muggle house that appears to have been the site of a massacre.
The door is hanging off its hinges. Inside, it's utter chaos. Smashed grandfather clock, overturned piano, shattered chandelier, and dark red, glutinous blood spattered high up the walls.
To any observer, it looks like a violent kidnapping or murder by Death Eaters.
But Dumbledore simply walks into the ruins, examines a plump, overstuffed armchair, and jams his wand into the cushion.
And the chair yells, "Ouch!" and immediately transfigures into an enormously fat, bald old man wearing lilac pajamas. Horace Slughorn.
The theatricality of Slughorn's evasion tactics tells you everything you need to know about his psychology. He faked his own death using dragon blood and transfigured himself to avoid recruitment by Voldemort.
He is a man ruled by a highly calculated paranoia.
Once Dumbledore magically repairs the room, which, by the way, is a phenomenal sequence of the blood retreating and the furniture righting itself, we get to the core of Slughorn's character.
He's been on the run for a year, bouncing from vacant Muggle home to vacant Muggle home, living in constant fear.
Dumbledore is there to offer him a job at Hogwarts, but Slughorn knows that stepping out of the shadows makes him a target. He is a man who craves comfort above all else.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I like to compare Slughorn to like an elite Hollywood talent agent who doesn't want to be the star, but wants to be the one who made the star.
That's spot on.
He isn't power-hungry in the traditional sense. He has absolutely no desire to sit on the throne. He wants to be the person who introduced the king to his first advisor.
He operates an informal network of influence called the Slug Club, cultivating relationships with students he deems exceptionally talented, well-connected, or famous.
He deals in social capital. He surrounds himself with the editor of the Daily Prophet, the captain of a professional Quidditch team, high-ranking ministry officials.
He wants the perks of power, the free tickets, the expensive crystallized pineapple, the insider information without any of the danger or responsibility that comes with leadership.
It's a brilliant strategy in peacetime. You build a massive safety net of influential people who owe you favors.
But in a total war, that kind of casual, self-serving opportunism that thrives in peacetime becomes highly vulnerable. You can't sit on the fence when both sides are demanding allegiance.
And Dumbledore knows exactly how to manipulate this specific psychology. Because isn't it a bit manipulative for Dumbledore to parade Harry around like a shiny object to trap this guy?
Oh, it's incredibly manipulative. He didn't bring Harry along for protection. He brought him as bait.
Slughorn's attention is inevitably drawn to Harry. He talks about Lily Evans, Harry's mother, praising her immense talent, noting his surprise that a Muggle-born witch could be so gifted.
And Harry immediately challenges this prejudice, pointing out that his best friend is Muggle-born and the brightest witch of her age.
Slughorn's casual prejudice is a softer, more insidious version of the blood purity ideology driving the war.
Exactly. He doesn't want to eradicate Muggle-borns, but he fundamentally views them as anomalies. He views people as assets to be categorized.
Dumbledore recognizes that Slughorn won't be able to resist adding the Chosen One to his collection. So Dumbledore excuses himself to use the bathroom, deliberately leaving Harry alone with Slughorn.
Dumbledore is weaponizing Harry's fame, parading him like a shiny lure to trap Slughorn into accepting a highly dangerous position.
And it works flawlessly. As Dumbledore and Harry walk away from the house, Slughorn comes bursting out the door, yelling that he will take the job, immediately demanding a pay raise.
He trades his safety for the irresistible opportunity to collect the most famous boy in the world.
Dumbledore's metaphor for Slughorn is chilling. He warns Harry that Slughorn is like a spider spinning a web, twitching threads to bring juicy flies closer.
He is explicitly telling Harry, I used you to catch him, and now he is going to try to catch you. You have to navigate this.
This theme of navigating manipulation transitions directly into the most pivotal conversation of the text so far. Before they enter the burrow, Dumbledore takes Harry aside into a rundown broom shed for a private conference.
And the environment is so cramped, smelling of damp earth and old wood, it strips away the grandeur of the headmaster's office.
It's just the two of them.
Dumbledore finally addresses the grief Harry has been carrying all summer. He acknowledges the absolute cruelty of Sirius's death, validating the anger and the profound sense of loss.
Because for 5 years, Dumbledore operated on a policy of protection through obfuscation. He withheld critical information from Harry in a misguided attempt to preserve his childhood.
The destruction at the Department of Mysteries proved that strategy fatal. In this broom shed, Dumbledore is formally changing his tactical approach. He's moving from trying to protect Harry through ignorance to protecting him through preparation.
Harry demonstrates incredible emotional resilience here. He tells Dumbledore that he knows he can't shut himself away. He acknowledges the deaths of Amelia Bones and Emmeline Vance.
He recognizes his own mortality.
And then he articulates this chilling resolve. He says that if it is his turn to die, he is going to take as many Death Eaters with him as he can, and Voldemort too, if possible.
It is the psychological shift from victim to combatant. Harry is no longer just running away from the danger, he is actively planning to engage it.
It's like a soldier finally understanding that the outcome of the entire war rests solely on their shoulders.
This raises an important question about the psychological burden placed on a teenager, and how validating Harry's grief is a crucial step in preparing him for the war ahead. Dumbledore validates this, telling Harry he is proud of him.
He then reveals that the wording of the prophecy, "neither can live while the other survives," has leaked to the public.
The entire magical world is looking to Harry as their savior.
Dumbledore is transferring the strategic burden onto Harry. To equip him for this, Dumbledore announces that he will be giving Harry private lessons this year.
He doesn't define the curriculum, but the implication is clear: the time for standard education is over. Harry is entering specialized combat training.
And to underscore the immediate pervasive danger, Dumbledore gives Harry a mandate. He must keep his invisibility cloak on his person at all times.
Even within the walls of Hogwarts.
It is a devastating admission from the headmaster. He is acknowledging that the school is no longer a sanctuary. The war has breached the walls.
With that heavy realization, they finally enter the burrow. We move from high-stakes magical politics and clandestine strategy into the chaotic domestic reality of the Weasley household.
But the war has fundamentally altered the emotional architecture of the space.
The burrow is traditionally a place of warmth and chaotic safety. Now it is heavily fortified. The Ministry is intercepting and screening all their mail.
Mrs. Weasley demands security questions before unbolting the door. The physical space is choked by paranoia.
And the people inside are deeply scarred. We see Nymphadora Tonks sitting at the kitchen table.
Tonks is an Auror, typically vibrant, sporting bright pink hair and a bubbly demeanor. But now, her hair is mousy brown, her face is drawn, and she radiates misery.
The trauma Tonks is experiencing is profound. We later learn she is suffering from crippling survivor's guilt. She fought Bellatrix Lestrange at the Ministry, and because she failed to defeat her, Bellatrix went on to kill Sirius.
Tonks internalized that failure.
And the psychological weight of that guilt has actually broken her magic. She is a metamorphmagus. She's supposed to be able to change her physical appearance at will.
But her depression has stripped her of that ability.
Her emotional state has physically manifested as a loss of magical identity. It is a stark reminder of the human cost of the conflict.
But juxtaposed against this severe trauma is a deeply petty, intense familial conflict surrounding Bill Weasley's engagement to Fleur Delacour.
The beautiful, slightly arrogant French witch has moved into the burrow, and the women of the house, Mrs. Weasley, Hermione, and Ginny, are in open revolt.
Ginny has taken to calling her phlegm.
Mrs. Weasley constantly tries to invite Tonks over for dinner, openly hoping Bill will break off the engagement.
On the surface, it seems absurd. With the world essentially ending, why do OWL results or family squabbles about weddings even matter to these characters?
It's the desperate pursuit of normalcy. When the macro-level world is completely out of your control, you hyperfixate on the micro-level issues you feel you can control. Focusing on exams and petty family drama is a coping mechanism.
Mrs. Weasley can't defeat Voldemort, but she feels she might be able to manage her son's romantic life. It is a coping mechanism to stave off the terror of the larger reality.
And that terror is driving a bizarre, unregulated wartime economy. Arthur Weasley returns home exhausted from his new position, heading the Office for the Detection and Confiscation of Counterfeit Defensive Spells and Protective Objects.
It is pure crisis profiteering.
Yeah.
The public watch the government fail to prevent mass breakouts and infrastructure collapse. They have lost faith in institutional protection.
Consequently, they are desperate, buying anything that promises safety, and charlatans are flooding the market.
Arthur is confiscating protective potions that are actually just gravy mixed with toxic plant pus. He's dealing with offensive jinxes that cause physical mutilation.
And my absolute favorite, grim detail, metamorph metals.
Oh, those are wild.
They are sold with the promise of altering your appearance to hide you from Death Eaters. In reality, they just turn you a sickly shade of orange or cause you to sprout tentacle-like warts.
It is the magical equivalent of snake oil salesmen peddling fake cures during a real-world plague. It highlights the absolute vulnerability of a terrified populace.
Amidst this atmosphere of dread and petty domestic warfare, the structural milestones of teenage life arrive. The OWL results are delivered.
The fifth-year exams.
Yeah.
The results that dictate their future careers. Hermione, predictably, falls into a spiral of academic panic, sporting a massive purple-black eye from a malfunctioning joke telescope she accidentally triggered.
She achieves 9 outstandings and 1 exceeds expectations.
Ron performs solidly. But Harry's results provide a moment of devastating irony. Harry receives an outstanding in defense against the dark arts, which is expected, but he receives and exceeds expectations in potions.
And this is the bureaucratic wall hitting the cosmic destiny.
It really is.
Harry has stated repeatedly that his only career ambition is to become an Auror. To enter Auror training, he needs to take NEWT-level potions. But Professor Snape, who teaches that class, requires a perfect, outstanding grade for entry.
Harry has just accepted his role as the Chosen One. He has looked Dumbledore in the eye and agreed to a fight to the death with the most dangerous dark wizard in history.
He is actively engaged in the war.
Yet on paper, a B in potions officially disqualifies him from the very government training program designed to catch dark wizards. The academic bureaucracy has completely failed to align with the apocalyptic reality.
Harry is deemed unqualified for the destiny he is already bleeding for.
This theme of institutional decay culminates in the family's trip to Diagon Alley to purchase school supplies. Diagon Alley is the economic and cultural heart of the British magical world.
Traditionally, it is bustling, vibrant, and safe.
But this trip is a military operation. They are transported in ministry cars. Hagrid is deployed as a physical bodyguard, and when they walk into the alley, it is a ghost town.
Shops are boarded up, the streets are half deserted.
And the disappearances are strategic. Florian Fortescue, the owner of the ice cream parlor, has been dragged off. But vastly more concerning is the disappearance of Ollivander.
The premier wand maker in the country. His shop is simply empty, or no sign of a struggle, just gone.
The loss of Ollivander represents a catastrophic strategic vulnerability. Wands are the primary conduit for magic.
If Voldemort controls the supply of wands, or has captured the man who understands wand lore better than anyone else, he controls the fundamental infrastructure of magical combat.
The foundation of their society is being systematically dismantled. The bridge has fallen. The wand maker is gone. The minister is ousted.
It's all falling apart.
So, what does this all mean? We started by watching a Muggle prime minister buckle under the weight of an invisible war. We watched the magical government abandon diplomacy for militarized panic.
We witnessed a mother leverage an unbreakable vow against a double agent, subverting the orders of a dark master out of sheer desperation.
We saw Dumbledore manipulate the grief of a teenager and the vanity of a retired professor to set the pieces on the board for an open conflict.
We saw how deeply trauma can break a person's identity and how violently a society will cling to petty arguments and academic scores to maintain the illusion of control while the infrastructure of their world quietly disappears.
The overarching narrative here is the total collapse of the safety net. Every character is being forced to operate without the institutional, magical, or familial protections they previously relied upon.
And that leaves us with a profound final thought to carry forward. Look at the immense constraints placed on every person in this narrative.
The Muggle Prime Minister is trapped by magical physics he can't comprehend.
Narcissa is trapped by the terrifying dictates of a Dark Lord.
Slughorn is trapped by his own cowardice and Dumbledore's brilliant manipulation.
And Harry is trapped by a prophecy he never asked for.
They're all caught in webs spun by systems, individuals, or ancient magics far more powerful than they are. Yet the defining moments of these chapters are not the traps themselves, but the choices made within those traps.
Snape chooses to bind his very life to an impossible vow.
Slughorn chooses to step out of his armchair and back into the line of fire.
Narcissa chooses her son over her ideology.
And Harry chooses to fight, even when the institutional grading system tells him he isn't qualified to do so. It forces us to ask, when the systems that govern our lives inevitably fail, how much of our path is laid out for us by circumstance, and how much do we carve out ourselves in the dark?
It is the essential question of agency in a world falling apart.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the text, keep questioning the motivations behind the magic, and remember to look closely at the choices people make when the invisible walls finally come down.
Until next time.